The elevator doors opened, and Scarlett Russo stepped out into a world she was not supposed to know existed. "You're carrying my child." The voice came from the shadows of her own apartment, low, textured, certain. Not a question. Not an accusation. A declaration. The way a man announces the weather or the time of day. Because reality doesn't require his permission to exist. Scarlett froze. Her keys were still in her hand. The grocery bag, prenatal vitamins, ginger tea, saltine crackers, hung from her wrist like evidence. She'd had 23 days to prepare for this moment. She hadn't prepared enough. He stepped into the light. Ryder Voss. 6'3" of bespoke charcoal wool. Jaw like it had been carved to punish. Dark eyes that catalogued her. Belly, face, hands, belly again. With the precision of a man who got paid to notice everything and forgave nothing. "How did you get in here?" she whispered. His mouth curved. Not quite a smile. Something more dangerous than a smile. "You left a forwarding address with your building manager," he said. "Signora Bellini. Sweet woman. Makes excellent biscotti." He'd charmed his way past her building manager with biscotti compliments. Scarlett felt the first cold thread of real fear unravel in her chest. "Get out," she said. The words came out steadier than she felt. Muscle memory from 3 years married to a man who mistook her composure for submission. Ryder didn't move. He looked at the grocery bag. Looked at her. His gaze dropped, for just a fraction of a second, to her abdomen, and something crossed his face that wasn't tenderness and wasn't cruelty. It was something older than both. Claim. "We need to talk, Scarlett. We needed to talk 6 weeks ago. You were gone before I woke up. I had a meeting. At 4 in the morning. My meetings don't keep bankers' hours." She set the groceries down on the entry table with deliberate calm. Turned to face him fully. She was 31 years old. She had survived her mother's diagnosis, her husband's slow-motion betrayal, 1 catastrophic night of reckless decision-making, and 6 weeks of morning sickness bad enough to make her consider bargaining with God. She was not going to be undone by a beautiful man with bad timing. "You were hired," she said. "I paid you. That was the end of it." Something shifted in his eyes. "I was never hired," he said quietly. The words didn't make sense. She'd called the agency. She'd confirmed the booking. She'd left $3,000 in an envelope on the nightstand of the Four Seasons suite she'd booked under her maiden name, Gallo. Gallo, her mother's name, before the cancer and the bills and the machine that breathed for her in a private room at Mount Sinai. "I called the agency," Scarlett said. "The Meridian. I paid the deposit." "The agency is mine," Ryder said. "Has been for 4 years. I own the LLC, the building it operates from, and the investment portfolio it fronts for 3 other business interests. When your booking came in, my assistant flagged it. Your husband's name." His jaw tightened. "Marco Vitelli." The name landed like a slap. What does Marco have to do with? "Marco Vitelli is a liability I've been managing for 8 months, Ryder said. "He borrowed money. A great deal of money. From people who use my name when they want a debt collected. I came to your appointment that night to find out what you knew." Silence. The grocery bag crinkled softly in the air conditioning. "Instead," he said, and his voice dropped an entire register, low and rough as gravel under tire treads. "I found you." She should have been angry. She was angry. Furious, actually, a clean hot fury rising through the fear like a flare. He'd come to spy on her. She'd been a target, a means of intelligence gathering, and instead she'd stripped his shirt off with shaking hands and said please against his throat, and he'd looked at her like she was the most devastating thing he'd ever touched. She'd paid him anyway. Left the envelope. Walked out of that sweet feeling like she'd finally taken something back from a world that had been stripping her for 3 years. She pressed her fingers against her mouth. "You let me think you were a callboy," she said. "You needed something that night." He crossed the room, not fast, not aggressive, just steady, inevitable, the way water finds low ground. "I gave it to you. Don't." She stepped back. Her shoulder blades hit the wall. "Don't make that sound like a kindness." He stopped 18 inches away. Close enough that she could see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw. Close enough that her body, treacherous and hormonal and apparently without shame, Remembered every single thing those hands had done to her. Scarlett. Her name in his mouth was almost unbearable. You're pregnant. With my child. There is no version of this where I walk away. If you already feel it, that pull between what's right and what's inevitable, you understand exactly where this is going. Stay. Because this isn't a story about a woman who makes a mistake. This is a story about a woman who makes a choice, and the universe that choice sets on fire. Subscribe. Because this world doesn't let go, and neither will we. Who are you? She asked. Actually. He reached into the interior pocket of his jacket. She flinched. She couldn't help it. 3 years with Marco had conditioned her for sudden movements, and produced a business card. Cream stock. Embossed text. One name, one phone number. Ryder Voss. Voss Capital Group. Below that, in smaller italics, private acquisitions. Ryder Voss, she said flatly. Voss Capital. My mother was Italian, he said. My father was German. Voss is the name I use for business. The name I was born with is Valentino. The air changed. Scarlett knew that name. Everyone in this city knew that name. The Valentino family. Manhattan's oldest open secret. She'd grown up hearing that name in whispers. Her father, before he died, used to say when the Valentinos call, you answer, and when they don't call, you pray. 3 boroughs. 6 legitimate businesses. A real estate portfolio that had quietly swallowed half of Lower Manhattan. And underneath it all, something ancient and iron and absolute that the newspapers hinted at but never named outright. You're mafia, she said. The word came out raw. He didn't flinch. Didn't deny. Simply looked at her with those dark, steady eyes and said, I'm the man who is going to make sure you and that child are safe. Everything else is just history. History, she repeated. You mean criminal history? I mean legacy. I don't want your legacy. She pushed off the wall. Put space between them. Crossed to the kitchen island. Put granite between them. Like that would help, like anything would help. I want you to leave. I'm going to raise this baby alone. I've handled things alone before, I'm very. Marco Vitelli is dead. She stopped. What? 3 days ago. His body was found in the Hudson. The men he borrowed money from lost their patience. Ryder's voice was entirely, terrifyingly neutral. The police will contact you as his estranged wife. You'll need legal counsel. I've already arranged it. The floor tilted. She grabbed the island counter. Marco. Marco with his cologne she'd bought him for Christmas. Marco who'd looked at her across a restaurant table 14 months ago, and said I want an open marriage like he was ordering a different entree. Marco who had pressed his mouth close to her ear 6 weeks after that, when she'd finally said the word divorce, and told her he would pull the plug on her mother's life support if she tried to leave. Marco was dead. She hadn't killed him. She hadn't even. She had wished in dark moments, in sleepless 3 a.m. spirals, but she hadn't. Did you? She couldn't finish the sentence. The men Marco owed money to made their own decision, Ryder said. Each word was precise, placed deliberately, like a surgeon closing an incision. I had no involvement in his death. She searched his face for the lie, found only that same unreadable steadiness. But you knew it was coming, she said. A pause. 1 second. 2. I knew the debt was called, he said. I didn't intercede. Which wasn't the same as innocent. Which wasn't the same as guilty. Which was somehow worse than either, because it meant he'd made a calculation, and her safety, the safety of whatever was growing inside her, had factored into that calculation, and she couldn't decide if that was monstrous or protective or both at once. Get out of my apartment, she said. Her voice cracked on the last word. He picked up his jacket from the chair where he'd laid it. Unhurried. Certain. Your mother's bills are paid, he said at the door. 6 months covered. No conditions. I don't want. It's not an offer. He turned. It's already done. The door closed behind him. Scarlett stood in her kitchen for a long time. Hands pressed flat against cold granite, breathing. She called her mother's nurse that night. Mrs. Vitelli, sorry Ms. Gallo, of course, the nurse said, slightly flustered. Yes, the account was settled this morning. A full prepayment. 6 months. The billing department said it came in as a wire transfer from a corporate account. Voss Capital Group? Is everything all right? Everything's fine, Scarlett said. Thank you. She hung up. Sat on the edge of her bed in the dark apartment. Her apartment, the one she'd moved to with 3 suitcases and her laptop and nothing else when she finally walked out of the Vitelli brownstone in Cobble Hill and pressed her hand flat against her stomach. 7 weeks. The size of a blueberry, according to the app she'd downloaded with shaking hands, and then deleted, and then re-downloaded 3 times. Ryder Voss Valentino's blueberry. We are in so much trouble, she whispered to the dark. 3 days later, 2 men appeared outside her building. Not aggressive. Not visibly armed. Though she was already learning to read the slight bulk at the hip, the way a jacket sat wrong when it held weight. They were simply there, morning and evening, in a black SUV with tinted windows and New York plates that she ran through the DMV database at work. She was a paralegal, she had access, she used it, and found registered to Voss Capital Group. She called the number on the business card. He picked up on the second ring. You put guards on me, she said. Good morning. His voice, even through the phone, did something unconscionable to her nervous system. Remove them. No. I'm not. She pressed 2 fingers against her temple. I am not your property, Ryder. I'm not your anything. One night doesn't give you. You're carrying a Valentino, he said. In this city, that makes you important whether you want to be or not. The men Marco borrowed from know he had a wife. Some of them will want to know if you know anything about the missing money. What missing money? A beat. How much do you actually know about what your husband did for a living? He asked. Apparently, very little. She'd known Marco's import business was shady in the vague, willfully ignorant way she'd known their lifestyle was expensive and his explanations were thin. She'd told herself it was gray market goods. Watches. Electronics. The kind of soft illegality that kept a lot of New York running. She had not known, would not have believed, that Marco Vitelli had spent the better part of 3 years siphoning money from a man named Don Cesare Ferrara, skimming from a smuggling operation that moved out of Red Hook through the Valentino network's legitimate shipping front. She did not know this because Marco hadn't trusted her with anything real. She was the beautiful wife. The paralegal with good instincts and a sick mother who made her pliable, who kept her grateful, who ensured she'd never look too closely. Ryder told her this in a corner booth at a restaurant in Carroll Gardens that smelled of garlic and beeswax candles, where the owner greeted him with both hands and a respectful half-bow, where the other diners somehow arranged themselves so that no table was within earshot. Ferrara thinks you know where the skimmed money went, Ryder said. I have no idea where. I know. He watched her steadily. But Ferrara doesn't. So I'm in danger, she said. Yes. She appreciated that. The directness. Marco had dressed everything in reassurance. You're fine, you're safe, don't worry about it, Bella, until the first time she realized that reassurance and truth were not the same thing. And you're offering protection, she said. I'm providing it. Whether you accept it is a separate question. How very semantically convenient for you. Something flickered in his eyes. It might have been amusement. She hated that she noticed. Hated more that it made the restaurant feel 3 degrees warmer. What does Cesare Ferrara want? She asked. The money. $12 million that Marco moved into accounts I haven't located yet. He poured wine into his glass. Didn't offer her any. He'd already ordered her sparkling water with lemon without being asked, which was either thoughtful or invasive, and she was still deciding. And said, he also wants to make a point. Men who steal from Ferrara don't die quietly. Marco died in the Hudson. That was quiet for Ferrara. He set down the glass. You understand what I'm telling you. She understood. She was sitting in a restaurant in Brooklyn having dinner with an alleged crime boss, because she was no longer under any illusions about what legacy meant when a Valentino said it. Who was telling her that the man she'd been trying to divorce had stolen $12 million from a rival crime family, gotten himself killed for it, and left her behind as a loose end. I need you to trust me, Ryder said. She laughed. It came out harder than she meant it to. You walked into my hotel room under false pretenses, slept with me, disappeared, and didn't tell me who you were until you showed up uninvited in my home. Yes. And you want trust. I want you alive, he said. The simplicity of it cut through all her prepared responses. Trust is just the most efficient path to that outcome. Tell me why, she said. The truth. Not the version where you protect me, because it's the right thing to do. Why? He was quiet for a moment. The restaurant hummed softly around them. That night, he said at last. You came into that suite like you'd been holding your breath for 3 years, and you finally decided to let yourself drown instead. And I looked at you and I thought, he stopped. I thought someone had hurt something that was never supposed to be hurt. She stared at him. I'm not a sentiment man, Scarlett, he said quietly. I don't operate on feeling. But I made a decision that night that had nothing to do with Marco or Ferrara or $12 million, and I've been managing the consequences of that decision ever since. What decision? His eyes met hers across the candlelight. That you were going to be fine, he said. Whatever it took. She should have left. Found the first plausible exit, called a car, gone home and packed a bag and driven to her cousin's place in Connecticut and never come back. Instead she ate the pasta the kitchen sent without being ordered. Su consiglio del ristorante, the waiter said with a warm smile that suggested writer Valentino was not a man you refused to feed, and thought about the word fine and what it had cost her to stop believing that word applied to her. Marco used to tell me I was fine, she said. Ryder's hands stilled on the table. He used to say don't worry, you're fine, everything's fine, right up until the moment he told me he wanted to sleep with other women, and needed me to be okay with it. She looked at her water glass. He said it like a prescription. Take this, feel better, stop being difficult. He's dead, Ryder said. Not gently. Simply. He doesn't get to define the word anymore. She looked up. He was watching her with that same dark, unflinching attention. Not soft, not sympathetic in any comfortable way. Just present. Completely, uncomplicatedly present. In a way Marco hadn't managed in years. It was dangerous how good that felt. She asked him one more question before they left. The night at the hotel. You said you came to find out what I knew. What changed? He stood, buttoned his jacket in one smooth motion. The restaurant owner appeared with his coat before he'd asked for it. You opened the door, he said. She waited for more. He offered nothing else. They walked out into the Brooklyn night. October, cold snap. The smell of someone's fireplace cutting through the traffic exhaust, and the black SUV was already at the curb. She saw the 2 men from her building in the front, eyes forward, professionally invisible. I don't want to go to a safe house, she said preemptively. You're not. He opened the rear door. I'm taking you home. My men will maintain the rotation. You'll have a new number to reach me. And you, she said. Where will you be? He looked at her from across the open car door. Where I always am, he said. Managing things. She slept that night and dreamed of the hotel room. Not the sex, or not only the sex, though her body seemed to have filed that experience under reference material, critical, but the moment after, when she'd lain in the dark and he'd been very still beside her, and she'd thought he was asleep, and she'd turned her head to look at him, and his eyes had been open, fixed on the ceiling, with an expression she hadn't been able to name. She could name it now. Deliberation. He'd already been deciding. Already running the calculus. How to handle this woman, this complication, this thing that had happened that wasn't supposed to happen. She woke at 5 a.m. with her hand pressed against her stomach, and a clarity that felt almost like grief. He hadn't come that night because he felt something. He'd come because she was connected to a liability named Marco Vitelli. He hadn't stayed because of her. He'd stayed because she was already his responsibility, and writer Valentino did not walk away from responsibilities. The child made that permanent. That was what he meant. That was the calculation. You're carrying a Valentino. Not, you matter to me. You carry something that matters. She told herself this very firmly. Pressed it into place like a poultice. It didn't hold. The call came on a Thursday. She was at work, Marchetti & Sons Legal, 7th floor, Midtown, the kind of firm that specialized in the sort of complicated estate and commercial law that occasionally required someone not to ask too many questions. She'd worked there for 4 years. Her boss, Dante Marchetti, was a compact, silver-haired man with reading glasses perpetually perched on his head and a habit of whistling Verdi under his breath. She was proofreading a contract amendment when her desk phone rang. She didn't recognize the number. Scarlett Vitelli, said the voice on the other end. Male. Accented, Italian but American inflected, the accent of someone who'd grown up hearing the language at home. Or Gallo, is it? I understand you prefer your mother's name now. Understandable. Family loyalty is admirable. She went very still. Who is this? A friend of your late husband's. I'm calling because Marco owed me something, and now that he's unavailable to repay his debt, the obligation passes to his estate, which, as his wife, you represent. I'm not his wife, she said. We were in the process of. You were never legally divorced, the voice said pleasantly. Eve checked. Cesare Ferrara. She knew it without him saying his name. Knew it the way you know certain things when you've been paying attention to the shape of danger long enough. I don't know anything about Marco's finances, she said. Her voice was extraordinary. Even professional, the paralegal voice she'd trained for 4 years. If there's a debt claim against his estate, you'll need to file through Scarlett. Her name in his mouth was nothing like the way Ryder said it. This was ownership of a different kind. Cold. Administrative. I'm not interested in the legal process. I'm interested in $12 million that belonged to me and a woman who spent 3 years sleeping next to the man who took it. You must have seen something. I saw nothing. Come talk to me. Saturday. I'll send a car. No. That wasn't a request, Cara. The line went dead. She sat for a moment with the phone in her hand. Then she picked up her cell and sent a text to the number Ryder had given her. Ferrara called me. He wants a meeting Saturday. The response came in 40 seconds. Do not leave your office until my man gets there. I'm on my way. He arrived in 20 minutes. She'd thought she'd been exaggerating his presence in memory. The way she'd been unconsciously editing it, inflating it, because her brain was apparently still 17, and inclined toward drama. She hadn't been exaggerating. He walked into Marchetti and Sons like he was acquiring it. Dante Marchetti stepped out of his office and the two men looked at each other with the complex, layered recognition of men who operate in intersecting worlds and have the sense not to acknowledge it out loud. Valentino, Dante said. Marchetti. A pause. Your father would be proud of what you've built here. My father is why I build it the way I do. Dante looked at Scarlett with an expression she couldn't quite read. Concern, but also something else, something careful. She's good at her job. One of the best I've had. I know, Ryder said. She wasn't sure whether to be flattered or unnerved by the fact that he apparently already knew her professional history. She gathered her bag. We're leaving now, she said. We're leaving now. In the elevator, she said. You knew my boss. Our families have done business, Ryder said. Business? Yes. Legal business. He looked at the elevator doors. Some of it. She pressed her fingers to the bridge of her nose. I am a paralegal at a firm that does business with the Valentino family, which means I have been. Working in a building we own? Yes. He glanced at her. The property investment is entirely legitimate. And Marchetti is a good lawyer. Careful, ethical where it counts. Where it counts, she repeated. Nobody's ethics are infinite, he said, without any apparent irony. The elevator opened. She walked out into the lobby ahead of him. Stop knowing things about my life, she said. Stop living in the middle of mine, he said pleasantly. The SUV took them to a townhouse in the West Village. 4 stories, narrow, unremarkable from outside. The kind of building that existed in the background of 100 photographs without anyone looking at it directly. Inside, dark wood, old art, the smell of good coffee and something being cooked somewhere deep in the building. A woman appeared, 50s, dark hair pulled back, apron, expression of complete professional neutrality, and said something quietly in Italian. Ryder responded in Italian. The woman looked at Scarlett, down at her stomach, back at her face, and her expression shifted. Not warm exactly, but acknowledging. She gave a small nod and disappeared. Who is she? Scarlett asked. Elena. She runs the house. Your house? One of them. He led her through to a sitting room. A fire, actual wood, crackling in a hearth that had probably been in this building since 1890. 2 chairs. A small table. No windows on this side, she noticed that. Ferrara won't approach you if you're with me, he said. But you can't be alone until this is resolved. Resolved, she said carefully. What does that mean? He sat down. She remained standing, because sitting felt like agreement. Ferrara wants money. He also wants to demonstrate that stealing from him has consequences visible enough to prevent future theft. Marco is dead, which satisfies the punishment requirement partially, but $12 million is still missing. I don't know where. I believe you, he said. Simple. Immediate. She blinked. You believe me? Yes. Just like that. Scarlett. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and looked up at her with those eyes that had been doing damage to her better judgment since October. I've spent 20 years reading people for a living. You didn't know. The thing she hadn't expected, the thing that kept catching her off guard, was that being believed felt almost more destabilizing than being doubted. She'd spent so long in a marriage where her perceptions were questioned, her instincts dismissed, her version of reality gently, persistently corrected. She sat down. What happens now? She asked. Now I find the money before Ferrara decides your ignorance isn't worth his patience. And if you don't find it in time? He looked at her for a moment. Then he said, I'm going to ask you something and I need you to tell me the truth. Fine. Did Marco ever give you access to any accounts you didn't use regularly? A joint account you didn't monitor, a safe deposit box, any assets held in your name you didn't open yourself? She thought. 3 years of marriage. Marco had handled the finances. She'd had her own account, her salary, her own money, that had been non-negotiable, but everything else had been his. He'd said she shouldn't have to worry about it. She'd let herself believe that was generosity. There was a safe deposit box, she said slowly, at a First Republic branch in Midtown. He added me to it when we got married. He said it was for documents, passports, emergency cash. I never opened it. He always went alone. Ryder sat very still. Do you have a key? She did. She had a key she'd forgotten existed, on a small ring with a blue plastic tag, sitting at the bottom of a box of miscellaneous things she hadn't sorted through since moving out. She'd been avoiding that box. It had a picture of their wedding day on top. I'd need to go back to my apartment, she said. We'll go tonight, he said. There was a knock at the door. Elena entered and set down 2 espressos and a plate of something sweet, small, golden, dusted with powdered sugar. She looked at Ryder, then at Scarlett, then at the plate, as if to make a point. Elena thinks you're not eating enough, Ryder said. Elena has known me for 40 minutes. Elena has raised 3 children. She knows. She ate the pastry. It was extraordinary. She hated how much she wanted to ask what it was. Tell me about Ferrara, she said instead. Ryder turned his espresso cup slowly. Cesare Ferrara controls the docks at Red Hook. Has for 30 years. His family has been in this city since the 40s. They came up alongside the Valentinos, ran parallel operations, maintained a truce through the 60s and 70s. The truce held as long as territory was respected. And it isn't anymore? Territory contracted. There's less to go around. And Ferrara's son Nico, he's impatient. Young. Wants to expand. His jaw set. He's the one who called you, I'd guess. Not Cesare himself. Cesare is calculated. He wouldn't call a civilian directly. Why does that distinction matter? Because Cesare I can negotiate with, Ryder said. Nico Ferrara doesn't negotiate. He performs. She thought about the voice on the phone. Pleasant. Almost warm. But underneath it, something that enjoyed itself a little too much. Yes, she thought. That was performing. They went to her apartment at 9. 3 of Ryder's men swept the building first. She watched from the SUV with a surreal disconnection. This procedural violence of preparation. Her own life treated like a site assessment. Ryder sat beside her without touching her, which she was grateful for and also, God help her, slightly disappointed by. When this is over, she said, not looking at him. I'm going to Connecticut. To your cousins. She turned her head. How do you know about? I know where your family is, he said. I know where you're safe and where you're not. That's my job right now. Your job. The word sat wrong and he seemed to know it, because something in his expression adjusted slightly. My responsibility, he said. Better. Not by much, he admitted. And there it was. That flicker of something self-aware beneath the armor. It shouldn't have been endearing. It absolutely was. The box was exactly where she'd left it, in the back of her bedroom closet, taped shut, wedding photo face down because she'd had the presence of mind to turn it over when she'd put it away. She cut the tape, sorted through it quickly, efficiently, not letting herself look too long at anything. A birthday card. A scarf she'd forgotten. A small velvet box with her grandmother's earrings that she'd thought she'd lost. The key ring was at the very bottom. Small. Blue plastic tag with a number on it. She held it up. Ryder was standing in the doorway of the bedroom. He had not come all the way in. A choice, she realized, deliberate, giving her a boundary. That's it, he said. Yes. She carried it out to him. He looked at it, then at her. Scarlett, he said. Whatever's in that box. I know, she said. It's not mine. Whatever Marco hid there, I didn't know about it, and I don't want it. That's not what I was going to say. She waited. I was going to say, he said, that whatever's in it might tell us things about the last 3 years of your life that are going to be difficult to hear. She looked at the key in her palm. I've already heard the difficult things, she said quietly. I'll survive a few more. They didn't make it to the bank. The text came to Ryder's phone as they were leaving her building. She saw his face change reading it, the way a door closes when you didn't know it was open. What? She said. He showed her. The message was from a number she didn't recognize. A photo. Her building's lobby, taken from outside through the glass doors. Time stamped 40 minutes ago. She was visible in it, blurry, caught mid-step. Beneath the photo, 2 words. We know. They were watching, she said. They've been watching, Ryder said. Since before I got involved. He made 2 calls in rapid Italian, both short, both clipped, the way you speak when every word is instruction and there is no room for conversation. Then he looked at her. You cannot go back to this apartment, he said. What? They know you're here. If they followed you from your office. Where am I supposed to go? Her voice came out sharp with something that wasn't quite panic, but was its immediate neighbor. I have work. I have appointments. I have a doctor's appointment Tuesday. I'll have a doctor come to you. He was already moving, hand at the small of her back, not rough but absolutely firm, redirecting her toward the SUV. Ryder. The townhouse, he said. Until this is resolved. You keep saying resolved like it's a filing dispute. Get in the car, Scarlett. She got in the car. The point of no return had been crossed at some hour before this one, she realized. Maybe the hotel room. Maybe the moment she dialed that agency number. Maybe before any of it, some hinge point she'd walked through without knowing it was there. She pressed her hand to her stomach and looked out the window as Brooklyn scrolled past, and thought, Blueberry. We're going to be fine. Someone promised. The West Village townhouse at night felt different. More inhabited. The fire still burned in the sitting room, but now there were voices in other parts of the building. Low male, the murmur of people managing things. She counted at least 4 men she hadn't seen before. A laptop open on the dining table with feeds she didn't look at directly. Elena moving through the kitchen with a quiet efficiency that suggested she had done this. Kept people safe inside these walls, many times before. Ryder gave her a room on the 3rd floor. Clean, well-furnished, not spare but not personal. The room of a house that hosted people who needed to disappear for a while. Is there anything you need? He asked at the door. She looked at the room. The bed. The window with the shade already drawn. I need to call my mother's nurse, she said. And I need to stop feeling like I've fallen into someone else's life. The first one I can help with, he said. She called the nurse. Her mother, Vittoria Gallo, 63, former high school Italian teacher, currently fighting back from a stroke that had complicated the cancer treatment, was stable, sleeping, hadn't asked for Scarlett today, which was either relief or its own small sorrow. She sat on the bed in the borrowed room and told herself to breathe. Ryder knocked and entered without waiting. She noted this, filed it under things we will discuss, carrying a glass of water and a plate with bread, cheese, what looked like marinated olives. Elena, he said as explanation. Elena is operating under the impression that I'm a refugee, Scarlett said. In a sense. He set the plate on the nightstand. Then, unexpectedly, he sat, not on the bed, on the small chair near the window. Like he intended to stay. You don't have to, she started. I know, he said. They sat in a silence that was stranger than silence, because it wasn't uncomfortable. She ate an olive without intending to. It was very good. Tell me about your mother, he said. She looked at him. Why? Because you're worried about her, he said. And worry is better when it's spoken. She talked about her mother, Vittoria Gallo, who had taught 40 years of ninth graders to conjugate verbs and love Leopardi, who had cried exactly once in front of Scarlett, at her father's funeral, and composed herself within 60 seconds and then organized the reception with military precision, who had gotten sick and fought like it was an insult to her professional discipline, who was lying in a hospital bed at Mount Sinai breathing through a machine, and had told Scarlett last week, on a good day, voice thin but clear. Che bella, my girl. You look tired. Are you eating? I'm eating, mama. You're lying. Eat more. Ryder listened without interrupting. His hands were loose in his lap. The fire from downstairs made the room warm in some carried-up way. Or maybe that was just what it felt like to have someone listen without looking for the exit. She'd hate you, Scarlett said at the end. His mouth did that not-quite-smile thing. Why? She hated Marco. Said he had the eyes of a man who counts everything. She looked at her hands. She was right. And my eyes. She considered him. She'd say you have the eyes of a man who takes everything, she said. She'd hate you but she'd respect you. That was the highest compliment she ever gave anyone. She respected very few people. What does she think of you? Scarlett smiled, surprised to find she could. She thinks I'm stubborn and too proud, and that I should have left Marco 2 years before I did. She paused. She's also right about that. Why didn't you? He asked. She didn't look at him. The bills. He was quiet. The machine that breathes for her, she said. The private room. The specialist who takes her case every 6 months and adjusts the protocol. It costs. She shook her head. It costs what it costs. And Marco paid for it. And when I thought about leaving, I thought about what happened to that machine if I did, and I. She stopped. He used that, Ryder said. Not a question. He was explicit about it. The last time I said the word divorce, he told me. She took a breath. He said he'd make one phone call and the life support would stop. The temperature in the room shifted. Not anything she could point to, exactly. Just the quality of Ryder's stillness changed, became something precise and heavy. The stillness of someone who has made a decision and is simply allowing it to sit. He said that to you, Ryder said. Yes. In those words. Yes. A pause. Marco Vitelli, he said slowly, died in the Hudson because he stole $12 million from Cesare Ferrara. She nodded. He looked at her steadily. That's what I told you, he said. I know. Neither of them said anything else about it. She slept. She hadn't expected to. The anxiety, the unfamiliar room, the entire catastrophic architecture of her current situation. But she'd been running on adrenaline and morning sickness for 6 weeks. And at some point the body stopped asking permission. She woke at 3 a.m. to find the chair near the window empty. Ryder had gone. She wasn't sure when. Sometime after she'd fallen asleep, because she had a blurred sense of him still there in the room when her eyes had closed. He had, she noticed, covered her with the blanket that had been folded at the foot of the bed. She lay still in the dark and hated herself for how warm that made her feel. The bank opened at 9. They arrived at 10 past, Ryder and 2 of his men and Scarlett in a gray wool coat that was not hers, but had appeared outside her door that morning in exactly her size, and she decided not to ask. The safe deposit box was in a vault room 2 levels underground. Clean fluorescent lights. Small private booths. The bank manager, senior, nervous, with the careful blankness of a man who had served a wide variety of clients across his career, processed her ID and the key without a word, led them to a private viewing room, and left them alone. Scarlett put the key in the lock. Paused. Ryder stood behind her and to the left. Close enough to be there. Not close enough to impose. You can wait outside, she said. I know, he said. He didn't move. She turned the key. Inside the box. 2 passports. One Italian, one American. Both in names she didn't recognize. Giulio Ferretti, Michele Adriano. Both with Marco's photograph. A burner phone, dead, that would need charging. A USB drive. And a folded paper, handwritten, in Marco's slanted, impatient script. Her name at the top. Scarlett. If you're reading this, it went wrong. I'm sorry. I know that means nothing. But you were always the only part of it I didn't calculate. Keep the drive. Give it to whoever's looking for the money. Tell them it's everything. Tell them I want it out. They won't care. But tell them anyway. The house in Cobble Hill has a second safe behind the boiler panel. Combination. Scarlett's birthday. Don't trust the Valentinos. M. She folded the letter. Put it in her coat pocket. Took the drive, the passports, the dead phone. Turned around. Ryder was looking at her face, not the items in her hands. He left a note, she said. I know. You could tell. Yes. She looked at him for a moment. This man who moved through the world like an absolute, who had walked into her life under 3 different pretexts and stayed under his own, who had covered her with a blanket in the dark and arranged for a doctor to come to her, and paid 6 months of hospital bills before she had any reason to think of him as anything other than a stranger. He said not to trust the Valentinos, she said. Ryder's expression didn't change. He would, he said. Should I? A pause. No, he said, with startling candor. You should trust your own judgment. Look at the evidence in front of you and decide. That's what you've done all along. Don't stop now. Evidence then. Evidence said. He hadn't used what he knew to manipulate her. He'd told her the truth about who he was when she'd asked directly. He'd provided protection before she'd asked for it, withdrawn at the moment she'd objected. He'd covered her with a blanket and fed her pastries and listened to her talk about her mother without once performing sympathy. Evidence also said. He was a man who ordered violence with a phone call, who operated in a world where $12 million going missing was a reason to leave a body in a river, who had come to her hotel room under a false identity, and left her without contact for 6 weeks, and apparently felt that this was an acceptable set of decisions to have made. Evidence was complicated. She put the items in her bag. There's a safe in the Cobble Hill house, she said. Marco left instructions. Ryder nodded. We'll go today, he said. Don't you need, I don't know, a warrant? Your own safe-cracking team? I have people, he said simply. Of course he did. The Cobble Hill brownstone. 3 years of her life in a building she no longer had keys to, but Ryder's man. A quiet, broad-shouldered Sicilian named Tino who carried himself like furniture. Had the door open in 40 seconds without leaving a mark. She stood in the front hallway and felt nothing, which was a relief. She'd expected the smell of the place to undo her. It didn't. It just smelled like a house someone had left in a hurry. The boiler panel was in the basement. The second safe was exactly where Marco had written. The combination was her birthday, March 14th, which felt like a cruelty she wasn't sure he'd intended. Inside the safe, another USB drive. $40,000 in cash. And documentation. Account statements, routing numbers. A chain of wire transfers so meticulous it looked like the work of a man who had been planning his exit for longer than he'd let himself admit. $12 million. Documented. Recoverable. Ryder looked at it for a moment. Then he looked at Scarlett. He had everything planned, she said. He was going to run. She let out a long breath. Just not fast enough. What happens now? She asked. Again. Different inflection. Now I bring this to Ferrara, Ryder said. The money is traceable. I'll negotiate recovery. The debt is settled. And me. You were never part of the debt. You were always just, he stopped. Chose his words. Proximate. Proximate. Convenient. In the way. She tucked the word into her chest next to the letter. Will he accept that? She asked. When I present it to him as a fact, yes, Ryder said. Cesare Ferrara is a businessman. He wants the money. He doesn't want more exposure. And Nico? A fraction of a pause. Just one fraction. Nico is a separate problem, Ryder said. She should have let it go there. He's the one who'll come after me, she said. Even after Cesare is satisfied. Because Nico isn't doing this for the money. He's doing it for. She thought about the voice on the phone. Pleasant. Performative. He's doing it for something to show. Ryder looked at her with an expression she was only beginning to learn. The one that meant she'd said something he'd already concluded, and he was calculating whether to confirm it or redirect. You've done this before, he said. Not quite a question. Done what? Read people. From limited information. Quickly and correctly. I'm a paralegal, she said. I spend my days reading documents that are designed to hide what they're actually saying. People aren't that different. He was quiet for a moment. No, he said. They're not. Something new in his voice then. Something she hadn't heard before. Something that wasn't strategy or obligation. Something that sounded almost like interest. Not the interest of a man assessing a resource. The interest of a man encountering something he hadn't expected. The meeting with Cesare Ferrara was arranged for Friday. She was not invited, which suited her completely and irritated her a little. The contradiction being, she supposed, a fundamental feature of her current experience. She spent Thursday in the townhouse with Elena, which was not the confinement it sounded like. Elena Conti, she'd learned the surname, it had taken 3 conversations and patience, was not warm, exactly, but she was present in a way that didn't demand anything back. She fed Scarlett regularly and without fuss. She occasionally sat at the kitchen table and did paperwork, and sometimes put on a radio station that played Italian music from the 60s. And once, when Scarlett came down at midnight because the baby was doing something acrobatic and she couldn't sleep, Elena looked up from her crossword and said, in thickly accented English, "Sit. I make chamomile." Scarlett sat. "How long have you worked for him?" she asked, warming her hands on the cup. "For the family," Elena corrected. "Since before he was born." "Were you," she paused. "Were you afraid? Of what they do?" Elena considered this seriously. "I was afraid of what happens when men like them don't exist," she said finally. "The ones who fill the space are worse." She picked up her crossword. "He is not a good man. But he is a serious man. There is a difference." Friday morning. Ryder left for the Ferrara meeting at 10. He was in a dark suit, charcoal, almost black, the kind of fabric that absorbed light, with a tie the color of old wine. He had the kind of presence in formal clothes that made a room feel rearranged around him. He stopped at the kitchen door where she was eating Elena's breakfast. "You need protein, not just bread," and said, "Tino stays in the building. You don't open the door for anyone you don't recognize." "I know. If anything." "I have your number," she said. "I have Tino's number. I have Elena, who I'm fairly certain is hiding a small arsenal in the pantry somewhere." Elena, from across the kitchen, said nothing, which was itself a kind of answer. Ryder's mouth did the not quite smile. "I'll be back by 3, he said. "I'll be here," she said. He looked at her for a moment longer than necessary. Then he left. She lasted until 2 o'clock before she opened her laptop and started researching Ryder Valentino. The public face was meticulous. Ryder Voss investment portfolio, Voss Capital Group, profile in Forbes from 3 years ago, board seats, charitable foundations, the normal architecture of a man who had a great deal of money and wanted the world to see it in the most boring possible light. The Valentino name required more digging. She found it in the kind of places digital archaeologists found things. Archived local news from the 80s, a federal court document that named a Lorenzo Valentino as a person of interest in a 1994 investigation that had gone nowhere. The social pages of a magazine from 2018 where a woman named Giuliana Valentino Rossi was photographed at a charity gala with the caption identifying her as sister of Manhattan financier Ryder Voss. Sister. She had a sister. Giuliana Valentino Rossi. Married into the Rossi family. She knew that name too, smaller than Valentino, connected. She was still reading when her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. "I hope you're comfortable," said Nico Ferrara's voice. "The West Village is lovely this time of year." She was on her feet before she'd processed moving. "How do you know?" "We've been watching Valentino's properties for months," he said pleasantly. "He's very predictable about where he puts the things he wants to protect." A pause. "You must be quite something, Cara." He doesn't usually bring them into the house. She walked quickly to the kitchen doorway. Tino was visible from there, in the hall, phone to his ear, face changed. He'd gotten a message from somewhere. "What do you want?" she said. "I told you," Nico Ferrara said. "A conversation. About the money. About what you know. About what we can work out between us," without Valentino inserting himself. A smile in his voice. "He's with my father right now, isn't he? Very convenient. Put something on the table." She met Tino's eyes. He was already moving toward her. "I don't know where the money is," she said. "But you found the safe deposits. We know you went to the bank. We know you went to Cobble Hill." He paused. Valentino thinks he's managing this. He is not managing this. Tino put his hand on her arm, not rough directing, and pulled her away from the windows. Elena had appeared from the pantry. She was in fact holding a firearm, compact, professional, at her side. "Here is what I want," Nico said. "Come speak to me. Today. Alone. Leave Valentino's protection and come speak to me. And I will tell my father that your debt is settled. The money is recovered, and you walk away clean. And if I don't, then I make things very difficult for a very pregnant woman," he said. "Still pleasant. And that would be a shame." He knew about the pregnancy. The world contracted to a single point. She thought of the blueberry. She thought of Vittoria Gallo's chamomile at midnight. She thought of a blanket, carefully placed in the dark. "Give me an hour," she said. "I'll give you 2, he said. "Call this number." The line went dead. Tino was already calling Ryder. She could tell by the speed of the Italian, the clipped cadence, the expression on his face. He was reporting, keeping the boss informed. She watched him and felt something crystallize. Not anger exactly, but a close cousin of it. She had been managed for 3 years. Every decision filtered through Marco's approval. Every action weighed against his reaction. She had spent 3 years living in the parentheses of someone else's sentence. She was not going to do that again. "Tell him I'm fine," she said to Tino. "Tell him I'll wait for him to come back." Tino relayed something. Looked at her. Said something back in Italian. His phone buzzed. He handed it to her. A text from Ryder. "Stay in the building. Do not contact Nico. I'm ending the meeting early. 20 minutes. She typed back. "I'm not meeting Nico. I'm not panicking. Finish your meeting and then we'll talk." A pause. Then 30 seconds. Not 20. Fastest she'd ever seen him respond to anything. He was back in 18 minutes. She knew he'd driven fast because he walked into the townhouse with a slightly different quality to his stillness. Like something that had been moving very quickly and made itself stop. He looked at her. Head to foot. Checking. "I'm fine," she said. "The baby's fine. Nothing happened except a phone call." "I know what happened," he said. "Tino recorded it." She absorbed this. "You record calls in this house." "Any call on this network, yes." He didn't sound apologetic. "It's security infrastructure." "Of course it is." He crossed the room to her, stopped 2 feet away, which was close and getting closer to the category of too close without quite reaching it. "Nico Ferrara called you because he wants leverage over me. Not over you. Over me. He threatened my baby," she said flatly. "He won't touch you. He knows what I'd do. And yet I should find that comforting?" He was quiet for a moment. "What did Cesare say?" she asked. "He agreed to accept the account documentation as proof of the full debt. Marco's estate, such as it is, satisfies the obligation. The 12 million is traceable through the records on the USB drives, and can be recovered from the offshore accounts." He moved to the window, looked out through the shade's edge at the street. "Cesare is satisfied. He wants it done cleanly. But Nico isn't satisfied." "Nico doesn't want money," Ryder said. "Nico wants to establish that he controls the city when his father steps back. And he paused. "I represent the thing that currently prevents that." She understood. She was a variable in a succession war. "He thinks that if he can threaten me," she said slowly, "he can see how you respond. And how you respond tells him whether you're off balance." Ryder turned from the window. "Yes," he said. "So what's the answer? How do you respond?" He looked at her for a long moment. That, he said, depends on you. What does that mean, she said. He sat down, on the arm of the couch, a rare informality, his jacket still on, and said, if you're someone I'm protecting professionally, Nico has leverage. The calculation is clean. Threaten you, observe my response, determine vulnerability. And if I'm not just someone you're protecting professionally? If you're something else, he said, then threatening you isn't leverage. It's an error. She heard what he wasn't saying. The air in the room was doing something complicated. Ryder, she said carefully, what exactly are you proposing? That you're not a liability I'm managing, he said. That this, his gaze touched her, traveled from her face to her hands to her stomach and back, is not a professional obligation. You said it was. I said that first, he acknowledged. I was wrong. Wrong. Ryder Valentino using that word felt like watching a cathedral admit it had been poorly cited. She pressed both hands flat against her thighs and made herself think clearly. You came to my hotel room because of Marco, she said. Yes. You stayed because I wanted to, he said. Because you were the most honest thing I'd encountered in longer than I can account for, and the world I live in doesn't produce honest things as a general rule. I stayed because staying was the first decision I'd made in years that felt, he stopped. Felt what? She said very quietly. True, he said. The word landed like something heavy set down with great care. She didn't move. Didn't say anything for a long time. The fire crackled downstairs. Elena's radio, faint and warm, somewhere in the building. You terrify me, she said finally. I know. You are objectively a dangerous man who operates in a world I want nothing to do with. Also true. And yet somehow I keep finding it easier to breathe in the same room as you than I have in 3 years, she said. Which is either the worst possible indicator of my mental health or, she stopped. Or, he said. She looked at him. Or it means that safe and good are not the same thing, she said. And I've been confusing them for too long. He looked at her with those eyes that didn't let things go. Scarlett. Don't say something calculated, she said. Whatever comes out of your mouth right now, make sure it's true. A pause. I don't want to manage this, he said. I don't want to manage you. I want. He stopped again, and this time the stop was effortful. The stop of a man who has spoken in strategy for so long that sincerity requires translation. I want to figure out what this is. With all the complications attached. Because the alternative, his jaw set. The alternative is watching you walk away, and I'm not built for that. She crossed the room. She didn't touch him, stopped just within arm's reach and looked up at him and said, very clearly, I am not going to be kept. I am not going to be managed or controlled or handled. I have spent 3 years being a resource in someone else's life, and I will not do it again. I know, he said. If we're, she pressed her lips together. It has to be real. It has to be actual. Not possession. Not protection dressed up as feeling. I understand. Do you? He reached up slowly, giving her every opportunity to step back, and pressed 2 fingers against her jaw. Tilted her face toward him. Not pulling her. Just indicating. The question in the gesture was unmistakable. She didn't step back. Yes, he said. I understand. Then he kissed her. Not the way he had in the hotel room. Not that contained, barely leashed intensity, but carefully. Like someone handling something that had been broken once already and mattered. The door to the sitting room opened. Not Tino. Not Elena. A woman walked in. Early 40s, dark hair, beautiful in the sharp-featured Valentino way. Wearing a camel coat and an expression of barely contained fury that she had clearly been composing for the entire drive over. Madonna Ryder, she said in Italian. Then switched to English. For Scarlett's benefit, clearly, because her eyes had found Scarlett immediately and catalogued her with an intelligence that was entirely familiar and deeply unnerving. I've been calling you for 6 hours. Your phone was off during the Ferrara meeting, Juliana, Ryder said. He had stepped back from Scarlett but hadn't gone far. His voice was even. His sister's entrance clearly didn't surprise him as much as it should have. The meeting I wasn't told about, Juliana Valentino Rossi said. By my brother. Who has apparently installed a, she stopped. looked at Scarlett fully. Her eyes dropped. Rose again. Odio. Juliana, Ryder said, with a warning in his voice. She's pregnant, his sister said. She is in your house, you've clearly just. She pressed 2 fingers to the bridge of her nose. And you haven't told Zio Aldo. The temperature changed completely. Who is Zio Aldo? Scarlett asked. Neither sibling answered immediately. That was an answer. He's the head of the family, Juliana said finally. She looked at Ryder. Our uncle. Our late father's brother. He has opinions about who the Valentino bloodline extends to and under what circumstances. The bloodline, Scarlett repeated. A child, Juliana said carefully. Born to an unmarried woman, outside the family's knowledge would be, she stopped. Would be what? Scarlett pressed. A problem, Ryder said. It was the flattest, most weight-carrying word she'd ever heard. Aldo Valentino, Juliana said quietly, would consider an unacknowledged heir a point of chaos. Someone Ferrara could use. Someone anyone could use. He would want the situation, she paused. Resolved. Resolved. That word again. What does resolved mean? Scarlett asked. It means, Juliana said, meeting her eyes with an honesty that was almost kind, that my uncle would want your child either formally inside the family or not born into it at all. Scarlett heard the words. Processed them. Set them down. Then she looked at Ryder. He was looking back at her with an expression she had no frame for. Not guilt exactly, but something layered underneath control. You knew, she said. I knew he would need to be managed, Ryder said. You knew your uncle would. I've been managing it, he said. Since I found out about the pregnancy. Aldo doesn't know yet. I've been managing it, she said. The word was ruined now. She could hear what it actually meant. The weight of it, the architecture of it. She was the thing being managed. Her pregnancy. Her life. I was trying to handle things in the right order, he said. Ferrara first. And then what? Her voice was coming out lower than she expected. And then tell your uncle his nephew knocked up a random woman, and she's going to have to. What? Marry into the family? Disappear? What's the option that isn't terrifying? I was going to present it as a decision already made, he said. Done and settled, which would mean you made a decision about my life without telling me, she said. Again. Juliana was looking at her brother with an expression that mixed exasperation and pity in equal measure. I'll leave you to it, she said, in the tone of someone who had said those words many times before. Stay, Ryder said. I am not, Juliana. She stayed, crossed her arms, looked at the fireplace. Scarlett was still looking at Ryder. I understand why you did it in this order, she said carefully. I understand that from where you stand, these are connected problems that needed sequential solutions. I understand the logic. She paused. But you should have told me. You should have said, my uncle is a problem, he's going to have opinions about this child. Here are the options as I see them. And then I should have had a voice. He was quiet. You're right, he said. I know I am. I'm not, he stopped. Started again. I don't have good models for this. For how to include someone in the calculation. I'm not the calculation, she said. I'm the person you're supposedly choosing to. She stopped herself. Pressed her hands together. Figure it out, Ryder. Because whatever your uncle thinks, this is my child. Mine. And no one. She looked at him directly. No one decides what happens to my child without me. Not Ferrara. Not your uncle. Not you. Juliana from the fireplace said, I like her. Ryder gave his sister a look that could have cut glass. That's not useful, he said. Sure it is. Juliana turned back to them, arms still crossed. Aldo is in the city. He came in this morning from the Hamptons. He came because he heard, someone told him, that you were hiding a woman at the townhouse. Her jaw tightened. I don't know who told him, but someone inside your circle broke faith. Scarlett looked at Ryder. Nico, she said. Juliana blinked. Ryder's expression confirmed it. Nico Ferrara fed information to your uncle, Scarlett said slowly. About me. About the pregnancy. To ensure that your uncle becomes a pressure point. so that you're managing two threats simultaneously and something slips. Juliana looked at her. At Ryder. Back at her. Madonna, she said softly. She figured that out in 10 seconds. 8, Ryder said, and despite everything, she heard the quiet, devastating note of pride in it. The crisis had layers now. Ferrara. Nominally resolved. Nico Ferrara. Active threat. Aldo Valentino. Incoming complication with authority over the family. Ryder stood within. And underneath all of it, a woman in a borrowed coat in a West Village townhouse, 8 weeks pregnant, who had walked into this story looking for one night of reclaimed selfhood and had ended up here. She thought about what Elena had said. He is not a good man. But he is a serious man. There is a difference. She looked at Ryder. He was watching her with an expression she finally had a word for. Waiting. He was waiting. Ryder Valentino, who moved rooms like weather systems, who made decisions with the finality of geography, was waiting for her to tell him what she'd decided. I'm not leaving, she said. Something changed in his eyes. Tell me about your uncle, she said. Everything. Right now. No management. Just facts. He told her. If you're still here, you already know this isn't just a story. It's a descent into a world where love and violence are the same language, where protection looks like possession, and surrender feels like power. He's running out of ways to keep her safe without keeping her captive. She's running out of reasons to fight him when fighting feels like the only thing keeping her alive. Subscribe, because the people who stay for this kind of darkness understand that the most dangerous thing you can do is fall for someone who was never supposed to let you live. Aldo Valentino was 71 years old, and had been the family's consigliere since 1987, and then its undisputed patriarch since Ryder's father, his brother Matteo, had died of a heart attack 6 years ago. He was by all accounts brilliant, conservative, ferociously loyal to the old codes, and possessed of the specific brand of absolute certainty that only men who have never been wrong in their own estimation ever develop. He would arrive, Juliana said, by 6. What does he want? Scarlett asked. To assess the situation, Ryder said. To determine whether what I've created is a liability or can be made into something legitimate, Juliana said. The word came out dry. Contained, Ryder corrected. He'll want to know who you are, where you come from, whether the child's existence creates legal or political exposure. And whether I'm a threat, Scarlett said. To him, everyone is a potential threat until demonstrated otherwise, Ryder said. Don't mistake his manner for hostility. He's assessing. And what do I say? The truth, Ryder said. Aldo Valentino has survived 7 decades by detecting lies in under 60 seconds. Don't attempt one. She changed her clothes. The borrowed gray coat was fine, but she wanted armor, or the civilian equivalent. She found in the closet of the room she'd been given things that fit her. The kind of quiet, deliberate hospitality that Elena executed. A simple dark dress. Heels she could actually walk in. A jacket. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror for a moment. Scarlett Gallo, 31. Paralegal. Daughter of a woman who had refused to be diminished by anything the world threw at her. 8 weeks pregnant by a man who called himself Ryder Voss to the world and Valentino to the people who mattered. You've survived worse presentations than this, she told her reflection. The reflection didn't look entirely convinced, but it looked ready. Ryder was waiting at the bottom of the stairs when she came down. He looked at her, the entire unguarded fraction of a second that his control occasionally permitted. And something moved in his face that she had decided to stop trying to name because naming it felt like an act of dangerous hope. You look, he started. Don't say fine, she said. Composed, he said. And more dangerous than you know. Good, she said. I need to be. Juliana, from the sitting room doorway, said, he's early. The car just pulled up. Aldo Valentino was not what she'd built in her head. She'd expected something ancient and stone-faced, gravity-made flesh. What walked through the townhouse door was a compact, white-haired man in a beautifully cut navy suit, with her mother's particular brand of intelligence behind his eyes, and the kind of stillness that took decades to develop. He embraced Juliana with genuine warmth. He clasped Ryder's forearm, not a handshake, something older than a handshake, and said something in Italian too low for her to catch. Then he looked at Scarlett. Not at her stomach. At her face. Signorina Gallo, he said. Not Vitelli. He already knew she'd reclaimed her name. He'd done his research. Signor Valentino, she said. A corner of his mouth moved. Approval, maybe, at the form of address. She'd chosen deliberately, not Don, which would be presumptuous, not bare first name, which would be disrespectful. Sit down, he said. We'll talk like people. The conversation was in English, which was a courtesy. Aldo spoke it perfectly, British inflected, from years of business across the Atlantic. He asked about her mother. He already knew the answer. The question was to see how she carried it. He asked about her work, her history with Marco, the marriage, the night at the hotel, the discovery of the pregnancy. She answered everything directly. No softening, no performance. The facts as they happened. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Marco Vitelli, he said, was a fool and a coward, and he is dead, which is the appropriate end for both qualities. He looked at Ryder, then back at her. The child is my nephew's. This is established. Yes, she said. And you, he said. What do you want from my family? She looked at him steadily. Nothing, she said. I want to raise my child safely. I want my mother to continue receiving the care she needs. I want to return to my work and my life. What I don't want is to be a bargaining chip, a liability, or someone else's decision to make. Aldo Valentino looked at her for a very long time. Then he looked at Ryder. Brava, he said quietly. He said it like a man who has administered a test he expected to fail, and found himself pleasantly surprised. She's not performing, Ryder said. No, Aldo said. She is not. He clasped his hands. The Ferrara situation, you have documentation? From this morning, Ryder said. The meeting with Cesare went well. The debt is satisfied. Nico. A pause. Nico is trying to use the woman as leverage against me, Ryder said. He fed information about the pregnancy to people he thought would create pressure. Aldo absorbed this. His face said nothing. His eyes said a great deal. Then Nico Ferrara, Aldo said slowly, has made a choice that has consequences. He rose, smoothed his jacket, looked at Scarlett one more time. You are not what I expected, he said. It wasn't quite a compliment. It was more than one. I rarely am, she said. He nodded. Once. Turned to Ryder. Handle your house, he said. Then handle Ferrara's boy. He moved toward the door. I'll see you Sunday. Family dinner. He left. Giuliana let out a breath she'd apparently been holding since the man arrived. Che sollievo, she mattered. What does it mean? Scarlett asked. Handle your house? It means he's given Ryder latitude, Giuliana said. To make decisions about this. She gestured vaguely at the space between Ryder and Scarlett, as he sees fit, without requiring family council approval. That's good. From Aldo, that's the equivalent of a standing ovation, Giuliana said. She picked up her coat, leaned in to kiss her brother once on each cheek. Then she turned to Scarlett, and her expression shifted into something that was entirely, unexpectedly personal. He doesn't do this, she said quietly. He's never, she stopped. Take care of him. I know that sounds backwards, but take care of him. She left. Ryder and Scarlett stood in the sitting room in the quiet that the Valentino family had occupied and vacated. Sunday dinner, she said. Yes. You want me to go? I'm not going to make you go, he said. But yes. I want you there. She looked at him. At the fire. At her own hands. When does this stop feeling like I'm falling off something? She asked. He came to stand beside her. Not in front of, not blocking, beside. Looking at the same fireplace. I don't know, he said. I'm still falling too. She turned her head to look at him. He was looking at the fire. The light caught the line of his jaw, the faint tension in it, the thing he was working at not showing. She reached over and put her hand over his. He went very still. Then slowly he turned his palm upward and closed his fingers around hers. That night she slept in her room and he slept, she assumed, somewhere else in the building. The arrangement was practical and also quietly, mutually respectful, And she found, when she analyzed it, that she was grateful for it. They were not there yet. She was not sure there was where she wanted to go next. But she fell asleep holding his hand in her mind like evidence. Saturday morning, Ryder was in the kitchen when she came down. Not Elena. Ryder, in gray trousers and a white shirt with the sleeves pushed to the elbow, making coffee with the focused competence of a man who does one domestic task, and does it with complete commitment. "You cook?" she said. "Coffee," he said. "That's the extent of it." "Why coffee?" "My mother used to say that a man who can't make a proper espresso has no business being in a kitchen." He set a cup in front of her. "She died when I was 12. I learned that year." She picked up the cup. "It was extraordinary." "I'm sorry," she said. "She was extraordinary," he said simply. "We don't need to mourn what was extraordinary." "Tell me something about yourself," she said. "Something that has nothing to do with any of this." He considered. Genuinely, she thought. Not performing consideration but actually sifting. "I read," he said. "What?" "Fiction. Old fiction. The kind that takes its time." He refilled his own cup. "Lampedusa. Moravia. Occasionally Dostoevsky, which Juliana says is a character flaw." Dostoevsky. "He wrote about men who do wrong things and know exactly why they're wrong and do them anyway," he said. "I find that more honest than most alternatives." She looked at him over her coffee cup. "And Lampedusa," she said slowly. "The leopard." He looked at her sharply. "My mother taught Italian literature," she said. "I know the book. If we want everything to stay the same, everything must change." Something crossed his face. Something she had not yet seen there. Something young briefly. "That's the only book my father ever owned in hardcover," he said. "He read it every year." "What did he take from it?" "Power," Ryder said. "I think he took that a man can recognize the end of his world and still conduct himself with grace." He paused. "What do you take from it?" She thought. "That elegance," she said, "is sometimes just very sophisticated grief." He looked at her for a long moment. "Yes," he said quietly. "That's exactly what it is." The morning moved around them. Elena arrived at 7:30 and made food appear as though it had always been there. Tino did a rotation of the exterior. Two other men whose names she'd learned, Sal and Giancarlo, Sal quiet and watchful, Giancarlo with a habit of whistling very softly, moved through the building with quiet efficiency. She worked from Ryder's dining table, because the case she'd been prepping for Dante Marchetti didn't stop for kidnapping attempts, and the normalcy of it was more steadying than she'd expected. Ryder worked from a study on the second floor. They occupied the same building like two people who had learned to read each other's rhythms without requiring explanation. It was the most peaceful Saturday she'd had in years. She mistrusted it completely. The peace lasted until 4. Ryder came down from the study with his phone in his hand. His expression was closed. The executive setting. She was learning to call it. The one that meant he had information he was processing. "What?" she said. "The FBI," he said. She set down her pen. "Special Agent Lucia Caruso," he said. "She's been building a case against the Ferrara family for 18 months. This morning she applied for a warrant to question the widow of Marco Vitelli in connection with the financial transfers to Ferrara's offshore accounts." "I'm not. The warrant names you as a material witness," he said. "It's not an arrest. But they want you in an interview room by Monday morning." She absorbed this. "If I go in," she said slowly, "and they ask about the safe deposit box, you tell them the truth," he said. "That you found it. That the contents have been turned over to." "To who?" she said. "I didn't turn them over to law enforcement." A pause. "No," he said. "You turned them over to me." "Which means," she said, "that the FBI is going to want to know who helped me access the box, where the documentation went, and why I didn't immediately contact the relevant authorities when I found evidence of $12 million in financial fraud." "Yes. And the answer to all of those questions leads directly to you." "Yes." She pressed the heel of her hand against her forehead. "Ryder, I am a paralegal. I understand how this looks. I am a material witness in a federal investigation who has been residing in the home of someone with family connections that the FBI may well be interested in, who found material evidence and handed it to. I know, he said. If they think I'm obstruction. They won't, he said. Because the documentation from the drives is going to appear in Caruso's evidence file by tomorrow morning. Anonymously. Through a channel they can trace back to Marco, not to you. She stared at him. You planned this, she said. I prepared for it, he said. There's a distinction. How very convenient for you, she said. For the second time. The same words, entirely different weight. She went for a walk. She asked Tino to accompany her, partly because the neighborhood wasn't fully safe right now and partly because she needed the fresh air more than she needed privacy. They walked 3 blocks. October cold, leaves still hanging on. The West Village in the early evening with its warm windows and its crowds of people who had normal lives and normal problems, and went home to apartments where no one had planted listening devices. She thought about what Elena had said. She thought about the leopard and sophisticated grief, and a man reading the same book every year, until he understood it was about him. She thought about the way Ryder had covered her with a blanket in the dark. He was not a good man. She had stopped pretending otherwise. He moved in a world where violence was a tool and money was a weapon and loyalty was enforced rather than chosen. He had come to her under false pretenses. He had made decisions about her life without her consent, more than once, not finished making them yet. And yet, he told her the truth when she asked. He respected her anger. He had looked at her in a hotel room in October like she was the most real thing he'd seen in years, and she had not imagined that, and it had not been performance. She pressed her hand to her stomach. Complicated, she told the blueberry. He's very complicated. The blueberry, at this stage of development, had no opinion. But she felt better having said it. She came back to find Ryder in the hallway. I'm not running, she said before he could speak. I know, he said. I'm also not going to stop being angry with you every time you make a decision about my life without consulting me. That seems fair, he said. And when Ferrara and the FBI and your uncle are managed, she used the word deliberately, we are going to have a very long conversation about what this actually is. What we are. What I'm agreeing to by staying. Yes, he said. Not negotiable. Not negotiated, he said. Agreed. She looked at him. He looked back. I need you to promise me something, she said. Tell me what. The FBI interview Monday. I go in clean. I tell the truth about what I found in the safe deposit box. The documentation arrives in their file beforehand, from Marco's channels. No other interference. My statement stands on its own, and you, she pointed at him, which felt slightly ridiculous given the circumstances, stay completely out of the room and out of the official record. That, he said carefully, limits my ability to. That's the point, she said. Promise me. A long pause. Promised, he said. Sunday dinner at Aldo Valentino's townhouse on the Upper East Side. Scarlett wore the dress she'd worn to meet Aldo. She had limited options. She refused to borrow any more of Ryder's mystery wardrobe, and sat in the back of the SUV telling herself she was prepared and mostly believing it. Who will be there? She asked. Aldo. Giuliana and her husband, Piero Rossi. What's Piero like? Quiet. Devoted to Giuliana. He manages the family's legitimate construction interests. He will be polite and say very little. Any other family? A pause. Aldo has a son, Ryder said. Luca. My cousin. He manages the family's operations in New Jersey. He and I, another pause. We have a different understanding of how things should be done. He's more like the old way? He likes the old way because the old way doesn't require as much thought, Ryder said. He'll be respectful to you in Aldo's house. Don't mistake that for warmth. Luca Valentino was 38, heavy-set in the way that used to be muscle and hadn't entirely stopped being. With his uncle's eyes and none of his uncle's subtlety, he looked at Scarlett across the dinner table with the assessment of a man cataloging livestock. Then he looked at Ryder, and said something in Italian with a smile that didn't reach anywhere near his eyes. Ryder answered in Italian. Same tone. 2 words minimum, flat and final. Luca's smile adjusted. Signorina Gallo, he said in English. Welcome to the family. The way he said it suggested welcoming was not the same as accepting. She smiled at him with the professional composure she'd spent 4 years developing and said, "Thank you." Juliana, across the table, caught her eye and gave the tiniest, most imperceptible nod. They understood each other perfectly. The dinner was, despite everything, extraordinary. Aldo's kitchen produced pasta that made her want to call her mother and describe it. The wine she didn't drink, sparkling water with lemon again, which had appeared without being requested, but everyone else treated with the reverence it deserved. The conversation moved in Italian and English in alternating currents. Business and family intertwined the way Ryder had said they always were, and she listened more than she spoke, gathering information the way she gathered it in depositions. Patient, attentive, reading what sat underneath the words. Aldo watched her watching. After dinner, while Luca and Piero and Ryder talked in the adjoining room, and Juliana slipped into the kitchen to argue warmly with the cook about something, Aldo sat beside her. "You listen very well," he said. "Old habit," she said. "Valuable one." He looked at his hands, his rings old gold, one on his right hand that bore a crest. "My nephew," he said, "has been running this family's interests since he was 26 years old. He is very good at it. He is also," he paused. "He learned early that feeling things was a luxury he couldn't afford." "I know," she said. "And yet here you are," Aldo said. "Here I am," she agreed. He looked at her. "Don't break his nerve," he said. "That is all I ask. A Valentino with broken nerve is dangerous to everyone around him." She turned that over in her head on the drive home. Don't break his nerve. Aldo thought she was the risk. That she might unsettle Ryder, make him vulnerable, cost him the steeliness that kept the family safe. She thought about that. She thought about herself, too. Sitting in a mafia patriarch's dining room eating extraordinary pasta, and calibrating what information she was gathering and who she was performing for, and whether she was doing it well. She had been, without entirely meaning to, adapting, learning the grammar of this world, reading the hierarchy, surviving it. She had, in fact, been fine. She pressed her hand to her stomach. They were both going to be fine. The car pulled back into the West Village, and Ryder's hand found hers in the dark back seat without either of them commenting on it. Monday morning. FBI Field Office, Foley Square. Special Agent Lucia Caruso was 37, sharp-featured, with the particular intensity of someone who had built her case brick by brick for 18 months, and was not going to let a widow with good posture deflect her. "The account documentation," Caruso said. "It appeared in our system Saturday night. No clear source. The trail points to Marco Vitelli's own encrypted email servers, but those servers—" "I can't explain how you received it," Scarlett said. "I found the safe deposit box, I found the drives, and then the matter was, the contents were passed along through channels I can't fully account for." Caruso watched her. "Can't or won't?" "I don't know all the steps," Scarlett said. "Precisely true. Were you assisted by anyone in accessing the box?" "I went to the bank with the key I found in my personal belongings," Scarlett said. "Also true. Were you alone?" "A breath. A fraction of a second." "No," she said. Caruso leaned forward. "Who was with you?" Scarlett looked at her steadily. "My attorney," she said. This was, technically, covered. Ryder had arranged for a lawyer to formally accompany her. The lawyer was there at the bank. Technically present. Technically her counsel. Whether the lawyer's primary professional relationship was with Voss Capital Group rather than with her was a detail that the FBI could investigate later, and that was not, strictly speaking, a lie. Caruso's eyes narrowed. "The documentation gives us enough to proceed against the Ferrara accounts," Caruso said slowly. "The financial chain is solid. We'll want to follow up with you again, Ms. Gallo." "I understand," Scarlett said. "I'm very willing to cooperate." "Good." Caruso slid a card across the table. "One more question." She paused. "How well do you know Ryder Voss?" Scarlett picked up the card. "He's an investor with business connections to my former employer," she said. "Why?" "Just making sure we have a full picture," Caruso said. "Of course," Scarlett said. She walked out of the building into cold October sunlight, and stood on the steps and breathed for a solid 30 seconds before she texted Ryder. "It's done." She asked about you. His response. "What did you say?" "That you're a man my employer had business connections to." A pause. "Good." She looked at the phone. Typed one more line. You owe me. 3 dots. Name it. She named it over dinner that night. I want to go see my mother, she said. Tomorrow. In person. No handlers, no protection detail. Just me and Tino at a reasonable distance and 2 hours with my mother in the hospital. He considered. Tuesday works. I'll have. Did you hear the part about no handlers? Tino is not a handler. Tino is a person who prevents other people from doing things they shouldn't. He met her gaze. 2 hours Tino in the hall. Non-negotiable on Tino. She would accept Tino in the hall. And I want to go back to work, she said. This week. Dante knows enough to keep things appropriate. I'll take a car. I'll keep Tino or someone equivalent nearby. But I'm going back to work. Thursday, he said. Give Caruso a few days to confirm that Ferrara's assets are frozen. Once his accounts are seized, the FBI shifts from our orbit. Thursday, she agreed. Is that all? He said. She looked at him. For now, she said. She visited Vittoria on Tuesday. Her mother was awake. A good day, one of the increasingly rare ones. She was thinner than the last time, which was expected. Her eyes were exactly the same. Sharp, dark, capable of reading a room from across it. Scarlett sat beside the bed and held her mother's hand and talked about nothing important for an hour. The weather, a movie she hadn't seen, a book she was reading. Normal things. The things that meant I'm still here, you're still here, we're both still here. You look different, Vittoria said. Doi. Something happened. Not a question. Scarlett looked at their joined hands. A few things, she said. Marco is dead, her mother said. It wasn't a question either. Yes. Vittoria was quiet for a moment. I am not going to say what I'm thinking. That's probably wise. E finita, her mother said. It's finished. Are you safe? Scarlett thought of Ryder. Of the townhouse. Of Tino in the hall right now. Reading something on his phone with an expression of complete professional boredom. Yes, she said. I'm safe. And the baby? Vittoria said. Scarlett's hand went still. Mama. I'm sick, Vittoria said, not blind. You've been touching your stomach every 10 minutes since you sat down. She looked at Scarlett with full, unwavering clarity. Who is the father? She told her. Not the full story. Not the mafia, not the safe deposit box, not the FBI. But Ryder. The truth of Ryder, as close as she could get it in a hospital room where the machines breathed steadily, and the light was institutional, and her mother was listening the way she'd always listened. With her whole attention, her whole assessment, nothing held back. When she finished, Vittoria was quiet for a long time. This man, she said. He covered you with a blanket. Yes. He listened about me. Yes. He made you coffee. Yes. Dio mio, Vittoria Said. Not quite a swear. Something between a prayer and a sigh. Of all the men in New York City, my daughter finds the one. She stopped. Pressed her lips together. Then. Is he good to you? He's trying to be, Scarlett said. She paused. He's learning what that looks like. So am I. Her mother looked at her for a long moment. Your father, she said, was the most complicated man I have ever loved. He made decisions without telling me. He kept things from me to protect me, which is a form of not respecting my strength. She tightened her grip on Scarlett's hand. But when it mattered, when I was afraid or in pain or lost, he was there. Completely there. And in the end, that was the thing I couldn't live without. Scarlett's throat tightened. Don't let him keep things from you, Vittoria said. But don't mistake complicated for wrong. She was in the elevator, heading back down when her phone rang. Ryder. Where are you? His voice was different. Clipped. No, not clipped. Controlled. The way something is controlled when there is a real reason to control it. Still at the hospital. Just leaving. What's? Nico Ferrara tried to access the townhouse this morning, he said. Tino's partner found one of his men doing perimeter reconnaissance. Tino is still with you. Yes. Oh, good. Don't go back to the townhouse from the hospital. I'll redirect the car. I'm sending coordinates. Ryder. Nico's escalating, he said. Cesare accepting the settlement didn't satisfy him. He's moving outside his father's authority. What does that mean? A pause. It means, Ryder said, that Cesare and I need to have a different conversation. And Nico needs to understand that some decisions have consequences he can't walk back. She heard, very clearly, what he wasn't saying. Be careful, she said. A surprised pause. Yes, he said. You too. The car took her to a different property, a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, smaller, older, with the solidity of a building that had kept secrets for decades. Juliana was there. Scarlett sat at the kitchen table and looked at Juliana and said, "Tell me exactly how bad this is." Juliana sat across from her. Nico is 29 years old, she said. He's been waiting for his father to step back and hand him the Red Hook operation. Cesare won't do it. Nico's too volatile. So Nico decided to manufacture a situation that forces Cesare's hand. Using me as the mechanism. Using you to pull Ryder out of position. If Ryder is managing a personal threat rather than a business one, he's vulnerable. If he's vulnerable, Nico can challenge the balance of power, take territory, build alliances with families who've been waiting for the Valentino hold to loosen. And Ryder knows this. Ryder has known this since you told him about the phone call, Juliana said. He's been waiting for Nico to commit to a move overtly enough that Cesare can't ignore it. You're using me as bait, Scarlett said. Juliana met her eyes. Ryder would never. Not Ryder, she said. Your uncle. Aldo. Silence. Aldo came to dinner, Scarlett said slowly. He assessed me. He gave Ryder latitude. But he also told me not to break Ryder's nerve. Which means he wants Ryder to be visibly, publicly invested. She looked at Juliana. If Ryder is seen to care about my safety enough that Nico thinks I'm a lever, then Nico keeps pulling. And Nico pulling is Nico committing. Juliana was very still. Your uncle is using me to draw Nico into a demonstrable action that justifies. She stopped. Something final. This was not Ryder's plan, Juliana said carefully. But he knows. A pause that told her everything. He found out, Juliana said quietly. Last night. He and Aldo argued. I wasn't there, but I heard it afterward from Piero, who heard it through the wall. She looked at her hands. Ryder told Aldo that the woman and the child were not collateral material. Aldo told Ryder that sentiment was a luxury men in their position couldn't afford. Ryder told Aldo. She stopped. What? Scarlett said. That he didn't care what Aldo could afford, Juliana said. That this particular sentiment was non-negotiable. The door opened. Ryder walked in. He looked at Scarlett. He looked at his sister. He looked at the expression on Scarlett's face. You told her, he said to Juliana. She figured it out herself, Juliana said, which was technically accurate and strategically convenient. He looked at Scarlett. I want to explain, he said. I know what happened, she said. Her voice was calm. Too calm, maybe. The calm of someone who is making a decision very carefully. Your uncle used me as a variable. You found out and told him to stop. He did or didn't stop, and now Nico has committed to something that requires a response. Yes, he said. What kind of response? He pulled out a chair. Saturday. Elbows on his knees. That posture, the one from the first night in the townhouse sitting room. The posture of someone setting down the weight they carry when they walk. Nico's move today was enough, he said. Cesare called me an hour ago. He's disturbed by his son's actions. Pulling Ferrara men away from authorized operation. Conducting surveillance on a Valentino property. These are the kinds of moves that can start a war. Or end a son's career. Juliana said quietly. Cesare wants to meet. Tomorrow. He wants to settle this privately, before it becomes public and forces everyone into positions they can't take back. Ryder looked at Scarlett. He also wants you there. She stared at him. Me. He wants to look at you himself. Understand what this is. Cesare is not stupid. He knows what his son was trying to do. He wants to assess whether you are real enough that the situation is personal, or whether Nico read it wrong and it's still political. He wants to know if I matter, she said. Yes. And if I do, the threat against me is a threat against a Valentino civilian, which changes the stakes significantly. Yes. She looked at the table, at her hands, at the shape of the decision in front of her. What do you want? She asked. I want you to be safe, he said. Which means I don't want you in a room with Cesare Ferrara. But I also want this to end, and the fastest path to ending it requires. You need me there, she said. He was very quiet. Yes, he said. She looked at him for a long time. She thought about 3 years in a marriage where she had been an object of strategy, where her safety had been held over her head as a lever, where her compliance had been purchased through fear. She thought about this man, who had argued with his patriarch on her behalf, who had covered her with a blanket, who had listened to her talk about her mother with complete attention, who had admitted, in the plainest possible terms, that he was falling, who was asking her, not requiring, not maneuvering, whether she would walk into a difficult room for an outcome that protected them both. I'll go, she said. He let out a breath. Scarlett. On one condition, she said. Whatever happens in that meeting, whatever Cesare says, whatever position he takes, I am the one who decides what I agree to. You don't agree to anything on my behalf. You don't negotiate my choices. I speak for myself. He held her gaze. Agreed, he said. Wednesday morning. The meeting with Cesare Ferrara was at noon, in a private room at a restaurant in Howard Beach, neutral territory, technically, in the way that neutral is a polite fiction that everyone agrees to respect. She dressed carefully. Not armor this time. Something honest. The gray coat, actually hers now, she'd decided. She looked like what she was, a woman in her first trimester who had walked into the deep end of something larger than herself, and learned to swim. Ryder's hand found the small of her back as they left the car. Not possessive. Steadying. She let it stay. Cesare Ferrara in person was nothing like his son. Where Nico performed, Cesare inhabited. He was in his mid-60s, with the look of a man who had been handsome, and stopped concerning himself with it once the power arrived to replace it. He sat at the head of the private table with 2 men she didn't know and his lawyer. She recognized the lawyer type immediately, old school, the kind that heard everything and filed it without reaction. Nico was not present. She noted this. Cesare looked at her the way Aldo had looked at her. Fully, assessingly, with the intelligence of someone who has survived decades by reading rooms. Signora Gallo, he said. Signor Ferrara. A pause. He looked at Ryder. Back at her. You are not what I expected, he said. People keep saying that, she said. Something in his face relaxed by a degree. Sit, he said. The negotiation was on the surface, about the Ferrara money, the documentation, the account recovery, the mechanics of settlement. Underneath it was about Nico. Cesare spoke of his son in the third person, with the specific kind of restrained fury that fathers direct at children who have disgraced them, and left them with an impossible choice between love and consequence. My son made a tactical error, Cesare said. He treated a civilian woman as a pressure point against the Valentino family without authorization. He stopped. This is not how I do business. No, Ryder said. It isn't. Cesare looked at Scarlett. He called you. Yes, she said. He threatened you. He implied a threat, she said. He made clear that the situation with the money would be uncomfortable for me if I didn't cooperate with him directly. And yet you went through Valentino. I went through the most reliable channel available to me, she said carefully, which happened to be Ryder. Cesare absorbed this. You are connected to Valentino. She looked at Ryder. He looked back. We are, she said, in the way that matters. Nico will be. Cesare paused. Nico is going to step back from Red Hook operations for a period. Indefinitely. He will be given other responsibilities. Less exposed ones. He met Ryder's eyes. He understands that he overstepped. He threatened a pregnant woman, Ryder said. Flat. Final. He made a significant error, Cesare said. You understand my position, Ryder said. Not a question. Cesare looked at him for a long moment. I understand, he said, that this is the line, and I am agreeing that my son crossed it. A pause. The Ferrara-Valentino arrangement holds. The territory is respected. The settlement is accepted. He looked at Scarlett. And this woman and her child are, outside the accounting. Now and going forward. Thank you, she said. He looked at her again, that assessing look, and something in it softened, marginally, into something she might have called respect in a different context. Your husband was a fool, he said. He was, she agreed. You are not, Cesare said. This is noted. They walked out of the restaurant into cold air and Brooklyn sunlight, and Scarlett felt the specific, cellular exhaustion of someone who has been holding something very carefully for a very long time, and has just been told they can put it down. She put her hand on the car door. Stopped. It's over, she said. The Ferrara problem is over, Ryder said. Yes. And Nico? Nico will be managed by his father, he said. Cesare doesn't forgive easily. Nico will spend the next several years rebuilding credibility within his own family. He doesn't have the bandwidth to come for us. Us. She turned around. Ryder. He stopped. Looked at her. She pressed 2 fingers to the space between his collarbones and said, When I said I wasn't leaving, I meant all of it. Not just the Ferrara situation. Not just until the crisis was resolved. All of it. Something shifted in his face. Scarlett. I'm not asking for a promise you don't know how to make, she said. I'm not asking for perfect. I'm not asking you to leave this world, or become someone you're not. She looked at him steadily. I'm telling you that I see what this is. I'm choosing it anyway. But I need you to choose it too. Consciously. Not as obligation. Not as protection. As choice. He was very still. Then he put his hand against her face, the same gesture as before, 2 fingers against her jaw, and tilted her toward him. And his eyes were the most unguarded she had ever seen them. I chose it the night I stayed, he said. Every decision since has been trying to deserve that choice. She kissed him. There, in the parking lot of a Howard Beach restaurant, with Tino and Giancarlo professionally blind in the front seats of the SUV and cold October air cutting across the water from the bay, she kissed Ryder Valentino with everything that was in her. The terror and the trust and the 3 years of held breath and the 7 weeks of a blueberry growing into something real. All of it. He kissed her back the way she'd known he would. Careful. Complete. Like something he'd been waiting to do correctly. When she pulled back, his forehead was against hers. What happens now, she said. Her question. New inflection. The best one yet. We go home, he said. Which home? Whichever one you want, he said. I have several. You can take your pick. She laughed. Actually laughed. And felt it travel all the way through her. We're going to have a conversation, she said. About the number of properties you own and why you think that's normal. After, he said. After what? He opened the car door for her. After I feed you, he said. Elena will have made something. Thursday she went back to work. Dante Marchetti looked up when she walked into the office. He looked at her. The way people who know too much look at you when you come back from something difficult. Without asking, just observing, making sure the fundamental architecture is intact. Good trip, he said, which was the politest available euphemism. Productive, she said. Your files are where you left them, he said. Except the Benedetti contract, which I finished myself because it needed to go out. I'll read it before it's filed, she said. Of course you will. He went back to his papers. Then, without looking up, he's decent. Valentino. Complicated but decent where it counts. She paused. You've known him a long time, she said. Long enough, Dante said. Long enough to know he doesn't make the kind of decisions he's making about you unless he means them. He's too precise for gestures. He turned a page. That's all I'll say. She went to her desk. She worked for 8 hours. Normal work, the clean, logical architecture of law and contracts and language designed to be precise. She was very good at it. She had always been very good at it. At 5 o'clock, the black SUV was at the curb. She got in. Ryder was in the back seat. You didn't have to, she started. I was in the area, he said. You were not in the area. I was in the area of the area, he said. She looked at him. He was looking out the window with the deliberate composure of a man who has done something slightly embarrassing and has committed to not acknowledging it. Thank you, she said. He looked at her. For being in the area, she clarified. His mouth did the not quite smile. The car moved through evening traffic and she put her head back against the seat and felt, for the first time in a very long time, the specific, cellular certainty that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. 2 weeks later, Vittoria had a good week. 3 good days in a row, which the doctors called encouraging. She asked about the man, not by name. She hadn't gotten the name yet, and Scarlett said, "I'll bring him to meet you soon." Soon, she said. Like it was a simple thing. Like she was talking about an accountant or a colleague. Vittoria said, "Is he good looking?" "Mama. I'm sick, not deceased." "Is he?" "Yes," Scarlett said. "Objectively." Vittoria made a sound that was the Italian equivalent of well, at least that. 3 weeks after Howard Beach, Caruso called. "The Ferrara accounts are frozen," Caruso said. "We're moving on the financial charges." The documentation that came in, it was thorough. Better than we'd expected. A pause. "Ms. Gallo, I want to ask you something off the record." Scarlett waited. "The chain of custody of that evidence," Caruso said carefully. "There are some elements we can't fully trace. But what we can trace is clean, and it's enough." Another pause. "I'm going to ask you one question, and I want you to know you don't have to answer it." "All right," Scarlett said. "Were you safe?" Caruso said. "Through all of this, were you and the baby safe?" Scarlett thought of Tino in the hall. Elena and her crossword puzzle at midnight. A blanket laid over her in the dark. "Yes," she said. "We were taken care of." Caruso was quiet for a moment. "Good," she said finally. "That's all I needed to know." The Sunday dinners became a pattern. Aldo, who had the specific generosity of men who test before they give, began to include her in conversations rather than observing her across them. He asked her opinion on a contract dispute. She suspected he knew the answer already, that it was a test, and when she gave it, precisely and correctly, he said nothing. 2 weeks later he asked again, this time with a more complex question. She answered. He looked at Ryder. Ryder said nothing. His expression said, "I know. I told you." Luca remained watchful and cool. She didn't expect him to change quickly, and she didn't require it. Some acceptance was earned in years, not weeks, and she had learned to distinguish between what was urgent and what could be patient. Juliana became. She wasn't sure if friend was the right word yet, but the word they were moving toward. In November, she moved into the townhouse. Not under any dramatic circumstances, no ultimatum, no moment of crisis. She simply noticed, over the course of several weeks, that she spent more nights there than at her own apartment, that Elena had begun keeping things she specifically liked in the pantry, that the third-floor room had been quietly reconfigured into something that felt less like a guest room, and more like somewhere she lived. She told Ryder she was keeping her own apartment for 6 months. Fallback. For 6 months, he agreed. And then we'll reassess. Yes. You're being very agreeable. I'm agreeing with reasonable conditions, he said. They're not the same thing. What's the difference? I'd disagree with unreasonable ones, he said. She thought about that. Have I ever proposed anything unreasonable? She asked. No, he said. You haven't. December. 12 weeks. The size of a lime, the app said. She'd kept it this time, stopped deleting it. She went to the doctor with Ryder in the waiting room. And when she came out with the sonogram image, he looked at it the way she'd seen him look at almost nothing else. Entirely, unguardedly, without the managed distance. Here, she said, pointing to the blurry comma shape. He looked at it for a very long time. Good, he said finally. His voice was, she didn't have a name for what his voice was. She took his hand. He held on. She took him to meet Vittoria in the 2nd week of December. He brought flowers, not a flashy arrangement, something Italian grandmother appropriate. Simple white roses, a plant, something that would last rather than be beautiful for a week and fade. Vittoria looked at him. He looked at Vittoria. They sized each other up in the way that people who are both very good at reading other people size each other up. Quickly, thoroughly, arriving at conclusions they don't share immediately. Sit, Vittoria said in Italian. He sat, answered in Italian, and Vittoria's eyes sharpened with something that was, despite herself, pleasure. They spoke for 40 minutes, Scarlett mostly translating what she couldn't follow. which turned out to be very little because Ryder's Italian was old world, formal, the Italian of someone who had learned it at home from people who meant it. When they left, Vittoria said to Scarlett, in Italian deliberately, "E serios?" "He's serious." "I know, Mama," Scarlett said. "Tienilo," Vittoria said. "Keep him." The problem they hadn't resolved came up in January. She raised it herself. She'd been thinking about it since October, with increasing precision, and she wanted to say it cleanly. "Your world," she said. "I can navigate it. I've been navigating it. But I need to know what it asks of you. What it asks of us." They were in the kitchen late, Elena long gone, the building quiet around them. "Ask me what you want to know," he said. "The violence," she said. "I know it exists. I know it's the underneath of everything. I know you order things occasionally that I can't know about and don't want to know about. I've decided I can live with that ignorance if it's honest ignorance. If you're not using me to look legitimate while something else happens." He was quiet. "I told you at the beginning," he said. "I don't have good models. But I have been, as much as possible, separating what I do from where you live. What you see. What you're part of." "Because of the baby?" "Because of you," he said. "The baby is part of that. But this started before I knew about the baby." She believed him. She was good at knowing when she believed things and when she was just choosing to. She believed him. "One other thing," she said. "Yes. Caruso," she said. "The FBI case. If it ever comes back to us, if there's ever a moment when being with you makes me legally exposed, then I will remove you from that exposure by any means necessary," he said. "Including, if needed, ensuring there is no evidence that you were ever anything other than a witness." She held that. "That should bother me more than it does," she said. "Probably," he said. She looked at him across the kitchen. "Don't ever use me for one of those means without telling me first," she said. "Agreed," he said. They shook on it, which somehow ended in his hand not letting go of hers, and that ending in other things, and the kitchen being very warm despite the January cold. February. Vittoria had a good month. A genuinely good month. She walked the hall 3 times with the physical therapist, which hadn't happened in 6 weeks. She complained about the hospital food with more vigor than she'd managed in months, which the nurses reported as a very positive sign. Scarlett sat with her on a Tuesday afternoon, and they watched a documentary about Rome, which Vittoria had opinions about, and Scarlett ate hospital crackers and the baby kicked for what felt like the first time. Too faint to be certain, a possible flutter, the edge of something beginning. She put her hand over it and said nothing and thought. "Hello." Ryder proposed in the most Ryder possible way, which was to say, not romantically in any conventional sense. He came into the kitchen one morning, set a velvet box on the table, and said, "This was my mother's. If you want it." She looked at the box. "What is it?" she said. "A ring," he said. "Her engagement ring. My father gave it to her in 1971 in a restaurant in Naples, and she never took it off." She picked it up, opened it. It was a small diamond in a simple gold setting, not ostentatious, not the statement piece she might have expected from someone in his position. Something personal. "And if I don't want it," she said. "Then you don't want it," he said. "And we figure out something else." "That's not much of a proposal," she said. "I'm not performing a proposal," he said. "I'm asking you a question." She looked at the ring. "The question being?" "Are you going to be here," he said, "past the 6 months, past the fallback, in this life with me, as a choice you've made with full information?" She looked at him. "Full information," she said. "As full as I can give," he said. "I'll never be able to give you everything, but everything I can give." "Yes," she said. He stopped. "Yes," she said again. "Put it on my finger." He did. It fit. She looked at it on her hand and thought about the woman who had worn it for 30 years, who had made coffee that her son had learned to make in the year she died, who had raised 2 children in a world that asked difficult things of the people inside it, and had loved them through that difficulty rather than despite it. "Thank you," she said. He looked at her. "For what?" "For being a serious man," she said. He understood. She could tell. He kissed her forehead, the corner of her mouth. The place where the ring sat. March. Scarlett Gallo married Ryder Valentino on a Saturday morning at a civil ceremony in Lower Manhattan, with Giuliana as her witness and Tino as his. Aldo came. Dante Marchetti came. Vittoria, against all probability, got a day pass from the hospital and came in a wheelchair and cried twice and denied both times. It was small. Deliberate. Nothing about it performed. Afterward, Aldo took Ryder's arm and said something in Italian, quietly, that she didn't hear. Ryder listened, and something in his face did what it only did in private. Opened briefly, like a window letting in light. She asked him later what Aldo had said. He said, "My father would have liked you," Ryder said. She thought about a man who read The Leopard every year, and understood it was about him. "Good," she said. April. Lucia Caruso called one more time. The Ferrara case had gone to grand jury. Nico Ferrara had been indicted on financial fraud charges alongside 3 senior members of the operation. Cesare himself had, in the kind of arrangement that happened when the evidence was too good and the lawyers too expensive, cooperated in limited ways. Nico would be occupied for years. The Red Hook operation was dismantled by the government. "Ms. Gallo Valentino," Caruso said, "I wanted to let you know directly. You're free of it." "Thank you, Agent Caruso," Scarlett said. A pause. "Congratulations," Caruso said. "On the marriage." "How did you?" Scarlett started. "I'm FBI," Caruso said, not unkindly. "I keep track." Another pause. "I hope it works out." "So do I," Scarlett said. "I suspect it will," Caruso said. "You seem like someone who knows how to read a situation." "Me. 24 weeks. The sonographer said. "Do you want to know?" Scarlett looked at Ryder. He looked back. "Yes," she said. "A girl," the sonographer said. Ryder was very still. She turned to look at him fully. There was something on his face she'd never seen there. Not the careful management, not the controlled authority, not the deliberate distance. Something wide open and slightly afraid in the most human way. "A girl," he said. "Yes," she said. He looked at the screen. At the small impossible shape of a person who would be born into a world that was complicated and beautiful, and sometimes violent, and sometimes extraordinary. He stopped. "She'll be fine," Scarlett said. "Someone promised." He looked at her. Then he took her hand and held it, and she felt his thumb trace the ring on her finger, once deliberate, like a man accounting for something that matters. They named her Matilda Valentino. For Ryder's mother, Matilda, the name his father had loved, with his name and her face and a set of lungs that announced her arrival with the specific authority of someone who intended to be heard. She was born in June, in a hospital on the Upper East Side, with Giuliana in the waiting room, and Elena making food that nobody ate, because nobody could sit still, and Aldo sitting in a chair reading a newspaper with rigid composure that fooled exactly nobody. Ryder held her first. He stood in the delivery room with Matilda Valentino in his arms, 6 pounds, 4 ounces, the most specific weight he had ever held, and looked at her with the expression of a man who has run his entire life on calculation, and has just met the one thing he cannot calculate. Scarlett watched him. "What are you thinking?" she asked. He looked up. "That I was wrong," he said. "About what I could afford." She understood. Vittoria held her granddaughter in August. A very good day. The best day in a long while. She sat in her hospital chair with Matilda in the crook of her arm, and said something in Italian, low, meant only for the baby. Ryder, standing beside Scarlett, translated quietly. "She's telling her not to be afraid of complicated men, as long as they're serious ones." Scarlett looked at her mother, at her daughter, at the man beside her, who was learning, slowly, imperfectly, with genuine effort, what it meant to be present rather than managed. "Your mother is very wise," he said. "She is," Scarlett said. "She'd be appalled if she knew you'd said so." "I know," he said. "I'll say it again on her next good day." The shape of their life settled into itself like a house finding its structure after renovation. Not peaceful, exactly. A Valentino household was not a peaceful thing. The phone still rang at inconvenient hours. There were still men with careful eyes at the perimeter, still meetings that happened behind closed doors. Aldo still had opinions. Luca was still watchful, still cool, though he had once, handed Matilda back to Scarlett with a gentleness that surprised them both and neither mentioned. But within that structure, a kitchen where Elena made extraordinary food, a baby who was aggressively opinionated about her sleeping arrangements, a woman who had learned to speak the language of this world without losing her own, and a man who read Il Gattopardo every year, and was beginning to understand that the book was not, after all, entirely about him. Some things had to change so that other things could stay the same. Some things had changed, and some things, the most important ones, had held. There was a moment in September. Matilda was 3 months old. Scarlett was back at work, modified hours, different arrangement with Dante, who had adapted with the equanimity of a man who had navigated the Valentino family for 30 years, and found a woman who navigated it as well to be a development he could accommodate. She came home to the townhouse at 6. Elena had Matilda. Ryder was in the study. She could hear him on the phone, Italian, clipped business, and she did what she always did. She went to the kitchen, took the espresso Elena had left, sat at the table with a document she needed to read. Ordinary. The extraordinary thing about it was how ordinary it was. She heard Ryder end the call. Come down the stairs. Stop in the kitchen doorway. You're home, he said. I'm home, she said. He crossed to her and kissed the top of her head, and then went to get his own coffee, and they sat on opposite sides of the kitchen table, and read their respective documents in complete, companionable silence. October. 1 year from the hotel room. She told him over dinner. October 12th, she said. He looked up. A year, she said. From the night at the Four Seasons. He was quiet for a moment. I know, he said. I know you know. I reserved the suite, he said. If you want to. Not yet, she said. Maybe not ever. That night doesn't need to be. We don't need to revisit it. She paused. We just need to know where we started, so we know how far we've come. He looked at her. How far is that, he said. She thought about it. About the woman who had walked into a hotel room looking for one night of reclaimed selfhood. About the man who had been there under false pretenses and stayed under his own. About everything that had happened in between. The danger and the trust and the impossible choices and the ring that fit. Far enough, she said. Not done yet. No, he said. Not done. Vittoria died in November. Not suddenly. There had been time to prepare, as much as you ever prepare. The machine slowed and then stopped, and then it was done. She went on a Wednesday morning, which was a school day and would have annoyed her, and the last thing she'd said, 2 days before on a good day, had been to Scarlett. You chose well in the end. I know, Mama. Your father would have liked to meet the baby. I know that too. Eat more. Ryder sat with Scarlett through all of it. He didn't perform grief management. He didn't say the things people say that mean nothing. He sat beside her, present and warm and solid, and when she cried he put his arm around her and let her. And when she stopped he made espresso and didn't ask her how she was feeling because he already knew. He arranged the funeral with the efficiency of a man who has buried people before. Practical, complete, dignified. He held Matilda so that Scarlett's hands were free, and he stood at the graveside with the quiet gravity of someone who understood that Vittoria Gallo had given him the most important thing she had, and that this was the last debt he owed her. The stone was simple, clean white marble. Her dates, and below her name, in Italian, the thing she had always said when asked what mattered. Famiglia. Coraggio. Verità. Family. Courage. Truth. December again. Matilda's first Christmas. Aldo, who had by now progressed from assessing to invested in the specific way of grandparents who refused to use the title, arrived with gifts that were aggressively age inappropriate for a 6-month-old, and an expression that dared anyone to say so. Juliana brought Piero and their sons, 2 of them, 8 and 10, who were immediately more interested in the baby than in Christmas, which was the first time Scarlett had seen Juliana's husband animated about anything, because he was, it turned out, a man who liked children and was good with them, and spent most of the afternoon making Matilda smile. Luca came. He brought a gift. He held the baby for 3 minutes, with the careful focus of a man handling something important, and when he handed her back he said, to Ryder, not to Scarlett but meaning both of them, "She's a Valentino." It was the most he'd ever conceded. That night, After the family had gone and Matilda was asleep and the townhouse was quiet, Scarlett sat on the stairs in the dark and looked at the ring on her finger. Ryder found her there. He sat on the step beside her. No questions. "I was thinking about the hotel room," she said. "Yes. I went looking for one thing," she said. "I left with something entirely different." "Are you?" He paused. "Do you regret?" "No," she said immediately. Clear, no delay. "I am telling you that life is extraordinarily strange, and that I am grateful for the specific way it is strange in my case." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "I went looking to take something back. I ended up building something instead." He was quiet. "That's better," he said. "Yes," she said. "It is." They sat in the dark staircase of the West Village townhouse, in a life that had cost both of them things they hadn't known they were paying, and they were there together, and Matilda was sleeping above them, and it was December, and it was enough. The story, as stories like this do, continued. Caruso made detective and moved to organized crime. The Ferrara case became a landmark prosecution that law students would study for a decade. Nico spent 4 years inside and came out quieter and meaner, and no one's immediate problem. Cesare Ferrara, in a development that surprised everyone except possibly Aldo, called Ryder in the spring and asked a measured, careful question about the possibility of a conversation. Ryder said he would think about it. He thought about it. He talked to Scarlett. She asked him what his gut said. He told her. "Then trust it," she said. He did. The Valentino family continued to be what it was: complicated, powerful, demanding of loyalty and offering protection in return. Ryder continued to run it the way he always had. With precision, with intelligence, with a ruthlessness that the people who deserved it encountered and the people who didn't never saw. Scarlett continued to be what she was. A woman who read situations and people with a clarity that had been sharpened by 3 years of survival and 1 year of love. She went back to full-time work when Matilda was 8 months old. She argued with Dante about case strategy and won, more often than she lost. She occasionally sat in on the less official conversations that happened in the townhouse and offered observations that Aldo, after the 3rd time, stopped pretending were unexpected. They were not a fairy tale. They were better than a fairy tale. They were a story written in the specific ink of real things, risk and choice and loss and trust built slowly in the dark, and they were still writing it. If this story found you when you needed it, pass it on to someone who understands that some love stories are written in blood and sealed with sacrifice. If you've ever been caught between the monster you should fear and the man you can't stop wanting, you belong here. Subscribe so these stories keep finding the people who need them. And if you want to know what it looked like, that hotel room, 1 year later, when Scarlett finally said yes, let's go back, tell me in the comments. Because in this world, nothing is ever truly over. The most dangerous thing she ever did was stay. The most dangerous thing he ever did was mean it. And they were both, in the end, exactly right to be afraid.